Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to Grounding into Your Radiance. I am your host, Stacie Barber. I'm really excited to be here with you today and to continue the conversation, right? Just the conversations that are so important about everything that's happening in the world around us, what's happening deeply inside of each of us, ways that we can really start to, bring the energy back home to ourselves. That's so much about the work that I'm doing right now, is helping turn down the volume of the external noise, the stimulus, the expectations, obligations, right? So that we can start to tune in to who it is that we really are, our inner compass, what it is that's most important to us. And so those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about here, right? Grounding into your radiance, like really coming back home to yourself, grounding in, finding your roots, finding who it is that you are before the world told you differently, right? Grounding in there so that you can really radiate greatness from every part of yourself, right? So that you can be the best human in the world for yourself and for all those around you. I'm again, Stacie. I am a conscious mindset mentor and a lifestyle coach for women. Specifically, I feel such a deep call to work with that population because I have been there. I have been in the shoes of feeling the pressure and the when the volume has been turned up on the external noise in my life, right? Like seeking the external validation, like looking outward for opinion or suggestion, when finding the answers deep inside of me, when I was able to get to that space, it opened such an awareness inside of me that deeply inspired me to help other people get there as well. So those are the types of things that we're going to really start to dig into together. And I would love to hear what's coming up for you from these conversations. What do you want to hear more about? Like, what is it that's really, resonating with you right now? And for me, the topic that we're going to talk about today, it somewhat came out of the blue, but then when I'm honest with myself, not really at all. Talking about social media, technology, um, the social dilemma, right? This is the Netflix documentary that I have really attributed to changing the way that I look at and live my life and run my business. So that's what we're going to dig into. My husband and I, we were in quarantine and I sat down to, just to watch something to get my mind off of things. We had a lot of downtime. And I think I had subconsciously been putting the viewing of this documentary off because, just to give you a little background story, before social media was even, something that was a big tool that we used in life. I'm going to date myself talking about MySpace, right? I have this vivid experience and memory of I was about 19 years old, working in a restaurant business. I had gone over to one of my dear friends' house. We were going to have a dinner party that night. And it's about 10 girls kind of sitting around the table. And all of a sudden, one of the girls mentioned another person that wasn't there and said, "Have you seen what they're up to?" Right? Like taking us out from the present moment, taking us away from the experience. And then she proceeded to go over to the computer, pull up her MySpace account, and I watched for about the next hour, an hour and a half, as everyone left their presence and their body to start to view and observe what other people were doing in life and what they were up to. And I remember sitting in that moment with myself, just dropping in and noting like something about this doesn't feel right. There's something about us being here in this space together, being in communion, being in relationship, enjoying one another's company, these girls that we worked day and night together. And then all of a sudden we're leaving this beautiful relationship that we've built here to then go and look at what's happening out there. And I just noted that for myself. And in that space, I was like, that's just not for me. And so for about the next 15, 16 years or plus, I just had no desire to be on Facebook, Instagram. I didn't know enough to know enough, and that was fine with me. I had just made the decision. I ended up dating and then marrying someone who had similar values around that. And so that was just the way that we lived our life. Yes, we got a lot of interesting pressure and flack from friends of wanting to see what we were up to on those platforms. But for us, it was just so much more important to be able to actually have a phone call or a conversation or meet up in person. So let's fast forward a little bit to about 4 years ago when my husband and I bought a brick and mortar business. So this is when the external, I'm going to call it noise or suggestion, started dropping in. And I'm sure if anybody is out there that's listening and you own your own business, and specifically something that you use social media for to market or reach your clients, that is sort of the message that is handed down, that if you're going to run a successful business in the world that we live in today, it's almost as if you would be crazy not to be on social media, right? That to get your word out, to get your message out, to increase your advertising and marketing abilities, that is the way that you can do that. That's the way that you get the message out. And so I found myself accepting that as my truth, despite what, I just told you, that the idea of how else am I going to market myself? How else am I going to advertise? This was sort of the logical way. And so I started the path of, um, you know, getting myself out there, getting the business out there, learning all of the algorithms and things, right? All the stuff that goes along with it. And I was okay in that space for quite some time. To say that I love the experience would be a lie. To say that I looked forward to planning my social media calendar would be an untruth, right? But did I love the ability to be able to get my message out and speak my truth? Yes. Did I love the way that I could reach people that I never would have in the world, that could resonate and really know in their heart of hearts that they're not alone in what they're going through? Absolutely. Did I love the way that it connected me with so many friends that I had found that we had been disconnected in life? Yes. But when I started getting honest with myself, and this is the conversation that we're going to go into after watching this documentary, right? When I started coming back into my deep remembrance of what it is that's important to me, dropping back into how it is that I want to show up in the world. When I started getting honest with myself and I turned down the noise and I went within to tune in to what was happening, the second I even allowed myself to consider getting off or quitting social media, I immediately had the most amazing sense of exhale. Like I could let it go and just breathe again, right? That I could release this expectation or understanding that this is the only way to run an online business, is to be on these platforms. And I allowed myself to sit in the fear, to let it come up, to let it show me and teach me what it was that I wasn't necessarily looking at before, to shine the light on things that I might have pushed down, those subtle nudges that were coming up before, letting them actually come into light so that I could be honest with myself about what it is that I choose to and desire to do to move forward. And that felt so good. And I still in that space of letting that part that I didn't know that I was picking up to hold on to so tightly with that grip, letting the grip loosen, let it release. I'm noticing that I not only have more joy in thinking about how is it that I'm going to organically market myself now, getting back to like the grassroots of talking to people about what I'm doing. And what I'm finding that's so interesting is since I've kind of um, gotten myself off of these platforms where I would spend a lot of energy expressing myself and pouring my message out, because I'm not sending my energy there, I'm not putting it outward in that way, I'm actually talking about what I'm up to more and more to people in person, in groups, like at work, all these different places. Like it's coming up more naturally. Whereas before, it was almost that sense of, okay, I put it out there, like it's out in the world. I don't need to do anything else. So it's so interesting. What I'm noticing is that when I allowed myself to consider a different way, right? A different opportunity, a different road for the journey that I see ahead, all of these amazing ideas and opportunities just started rolling in that I wouldn't have been able to see or would not have had the energy for before in my life. And I just find that to be so fascinating, right? To be able to allow ourselves to not only see a different way, but then walk through the fear, walk with the fear to then get on the other side of it, right? And so I want to bring you guys some of the information that this documentary really opened up for me, opened my eyes to. This is not at all to persuade or suggest anything for you at all. I want to bring this from my perspective, the way that it moved me deeply. And so that possibly it can help you, even if it's not about social media, but any area of life where maybe you have accepted a truth to be your own, start to consider that that might not be the only option for you. So this is what we're going to talk about. We are going to come back. We're going to dig right back in. I'm excited about this. This is something that is really, really important to me and close to my heart. So we're going to take a quick break, but we will be back in just a moment. This is Grounding in Your Radiance. I'm Stacie Barber, and I will see you back here in just a bit. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm Stacie Barber. I am so happy to be spending this hour with you, this time with you. I am here to bring the things up that are coming up around us in the world and in our lives, to really share from my perspective and those around me, to be able to really resonate in the oneness that we all share together. And so I hope that's what you're feeling from this time together. I hope to bring something that inspires, motivates, or kind of teaches you something new or shows you something in a different perspective, right? That really opening up to what it is that's available in our lives, really by choosing what it is that we want our lives to look like. I am here for anything that you need. I would love to hear from you. Ways that you can get in touch with me is my email. It's stacie.barber@gmail.com. And head over to my website just to see all the things that we're up to. And it's staciebarber.com. And again, I would love to hear from you and see what's resonating, see what you'd love to hear a little bit more about. Today, we're digging into the whole world of social media. After watching The Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary, when my husband and I were in quarantine, I felt a deep resonance to start to shift the way that I personally look at and run my life and my business. We were just talking about how, this is something that has been a really important component for me for quite some time, that when I allowed like the ideas or the suggestions of the external world to really make me think that the only way to run a business successfully in this day and time is to be on these platforms. And what I really started to step back and remind myself. I think this is what I like to call social proof, or your brain finding evidence, right? Of when something bubbles up, when you feel that sense of fear or hesitation, how can your mind find evidence or proof or truth that the opposite is actually true? And so I started in that space of, what would it look like to run a business without being on these platforms? Is it possible, right? This is what I'm asking myself, have other businesses ran successfully without these platforms? And as we all know, the truth is absolutely, right? And if we're honest, like, these platforms really only came around and became really popular as far as business goes, in the last 10 years or so. And so when I was able to come to that truth, when I was able to find the evidence in my mind, this grip that I had felt about, like, these expectations of showing up on these platforms started to dissipate, and really allow a sense of ease to drop back in. That, okay, like, I can name hundreds of businesses that either have just gotten on or kind of dabbling, or have never been on these platforms, that are, $1 million companies that are running beautifully. And again, coming back to that concept of, what is it that's important to me? How do I like to be in relationship with other people? I love conversation. I love that human connection. You will read in my bio that I am one of the biggest huggers that you will ever meet. I've had to pull back begrudgingly during COVID, obviously, but I just love human connection. And for me, through social media, I was missing that part. I was missing that eye contact, that human draw, that essence that you only can really get from someone when you're face to face with them, or in deep conversation. And so when I allowed that to come back to my awareness, again, it was as if the grip, the hold that it had on me started to dissipate. And I'm 38 years old, and what I would notice is that when I would get on social media to plug my content in, right, to post from the business or whatever it was, I would haphazardly, who all's done that, right? You just start, there's this like innate, like, your thumb just starts to scroll right up, right? And so I go on with a mission to be able to put my information out there, and you just get into the habit of scrolling. And what I noticed about when getting really mindful about what is it that I'm feeling inside, I started dropping into, how is this making me feel? And what is coming up inside of me? And what became very clear is that I would go on feeling motivated, inspired, really ready to put like an important message, or something that I knew that would encourage or help motivate others out there. And as I'm on the platform for some time, I would start to feel this deep sense of, well, why am I not as far along as they are? Or how does she make everything look so perfect and easy? Or what does she have that I don't have? Right? Noticing that what I was allowing in, how it was deeply, deeply affecting my overall well being and psyche. Getting onto a platform feeling a certain way, and then getting off feeling a completely different way, really started to open my eyes to the adverse effects that this was having on me, that I was completely unaware of for quite some time. And again, this is to only educate, to bring awareness, to share my personal perspective. I never want to come across as if I am suggesting or trying to persuade in any way. I believe that knowledge is powerful, right? And that we don't know until we know. And that was the exact case with me. And so if this resonates with you, beautiful. I hope that some part of this will just start to, again, open up the curiosity of, what is it that we're just accepting as our truth? And what can we begin to really cultivate in our lives that feels really good, like really, really good. Letting that feeling good be the ultimate goal, right? What is bringing me joy? What is bringing me ease? What feels so natural? And let that be your guide, versus because I'm supposed to, or because this is the way it's done, right? Those are just conditioned belief patterns that I really want to start to kind of pull like weeds out of a garden, pull them up so that we can see the roots of what's really happening there. And so I deeply enjoyed this documentary, The Social Dilemma, around bringing awareness to the masses as to what it is that some of the tech companies, how they've built these platforms, and what it is that they're quote unquote, bringing into our lives, and how they are, the way that they describe it is that, the technology that we feel connects us is also controlling us, manipulating us, polarizing us, distracting us from our lives, monetizing us, and dividing us. And if you start to think about the way and learn about the way that these platforms are built, and in the documentary, you're learning from the presidents, past presidents of Facebook, founders of different companies, design teams around the ones that actually, were at the helm of building these platforms, to see them waving the flag to say, if we don't start to do something different, this is not going to end up well. To hear these grown men and women say, yes, I helped build it, but there's no way I would ever let my child be on one of these platforms, because I know what it does. I know its goal. I know what it was built to do. And that is not what I want for myself and my family. When you start to hear that, for me, I started waking up, right? And I really love the way that they portrayed this in the documentary, how they would have different individuals speaking to this truth, but then they also had this family dynamic going on behind the scenes, right? And so that you could see how each person in the family was being affected. Tristan Harris was sort of the head. He's really the founder of what they call the humane technology movement, and his goal is to ask these technology companies that if you're going to continue to have these platforms out there, we need to do this in a much more ethical manner that's not harming the people that are using them. And a quote that I heard that really resonated around this is that there's only two types of companies that call their consumers users, and it is drug companies, or drugs, illegal drugs, right? And social media, right? The technology, the users, right? So leaving you with that thought for a moment, just to marinate on that, thinking about that as humans, we are essentially coming up against what they call supercomputers, right? These in-depth systems that were created to distract, to monetize, to keep us control and manipulate our thoughts and our buying patterns, right? I just want you to start to allow that to sit for a bit, just to think about, what does that mean? What does that mean about how I'm using the platform? What does that mean about how this is pulling me in? Can I start to notice what that is bringing up for me? And I just want you to sit with that with no judgment, just to allow it in. And I want to let you have that moment for, let that sink in for a bit. We're going to come back in a bit. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go a lot more in depth into what this documentary shared. But I want to inspire you just to allow whatever's bubbling up to bubble up, and just consider, what it is that is in our hands each and every day. So we'll be back in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break. Grounding into your radiance. I'm Stacie Barber. I'll see you in just a bit. Hi there. Welcome back. Welcome back to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm your host, Stacie Barber. So happy to be here with you today and talking about some topics that are really, really important to me. have really started to change the landscape of my mind and the way in which I look at and live my life and run my business. So I am excited to bring these topics to you. We're talking about the documentary, The Social Dilemma. If you haven't watched it, I think anyone that hasn't should. Just again, bringing back that knowledge is power. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we find out. And so that is exactly what happened to me when I watched this documentary. Going into it with a bit of hesitation, I'm a little bit afraid of what it might show me, and really coming back out on the other end with a completely different perspective. So let me know if these topics really resonate with you. I really want to speak to the audience. I want to speak from my heart. I want to share with you, what's coming up and bubbling up for myself and for those around me. Reach out to me. I love being in relationship with you guys. My email is stacie.barber@gmail.com, website staciebarber.com. Let me know how this is resonating if you'd like to connect. I would really, really love that. So let's dive into what it is that, really came up for me, and what this documentary so beautifully displayed. So essentially, again, this is the way that the film describes it is a group of technology experts essentially sounding the alarm on their own creations. So if you're at all, if in business, or if you've created anything at all in life, thinking about something that you were from, the ground up building and running and, creating something, and then seeing how it is affecting the people, the users that are on these platforms, and then saying, hey, we're raising the flag, we're sounding the alarm. We can see the effects, the adverse effects that the population might not be able to see, but we can see it, right? And so for me, just the fact that they had the courage, right, and the vulnerability to go there and to say the hard things that they needed to say for the greater good of humanity, that alone was really inspiring for me. And learning that through the documentary, I really commend each and every one of them. And it helps you to believe in the goodness of life, right, and of the populations around us. So thinking about that, really bringing in the awareness, like opening our minds to just see how these platforms were built and ran. And there are a couple people that I want to mention. One in which his name was Tim Kendall. He was the former director of monetization at Facebook, and also the former president at Pinterest. And a couple of things that he brought to the conversation really resonated with me. One of which I mentioned slightly before, that his children were absolutely not allowed to be on social media because he knew the adverse effects. And then also, he told a pretty vulnerable story about how he would come home from being, working at either Facebook or Pinterest, come home after building these platforms and find himself gently getting kind of pulled in unconsciously, right? Of he would be at home, and rather than going inside, he would sit in his car and scan through his social media before saying hello to his family. While his wife was cooking dinner, he would automatically find himself standing in the pantry away from everyone else, scanning on his device, right? And so that was sort of the red flag for him of, all right, wait a minute, like how am I allowing this thing that I know what it was built to do, right, to come into my life like this? And I think that for me, it really allowed me to realize that, yes, we are all human, that even the people that know better still can get sucked into that we're all human. Again, we are looking at a device that is always pulling us in, right? Even through the light on our phone, it energetically is drawing us in. It's keeping us aware and drawing us inward to the device and what's going on inside of it, right? So bringing that up, that really for me when he was sharing that story, I could resonate with that, right? How many times have all of us just found ourselves like mindlessly on these platforms for sometimes a ridiculous amount of time, right? And what else could we be doing in those times? Like, could we be snuggling with our children, reading a book, like creating something? Just allowing that in, right? The curiosity of what that might allow to bubble up. And the way that they've started to describe the way that the platform is really distracting and drawing your attention it's as if it's creating an attention extraction economy, right? And it's essentially referring to like the technology platforms, how they profit from and profit, monetarily from gaining human attention and engagement. That is the way that they make money, right? They keep us hooked on our devices with more engagement so that the advertising companies can make more dollars. The more that they keep us hooked, the more that we're there, the more money the advertising companies are making, and right? And we're talking about these technology and advertising companies are making more than any other companies in history, right? But to what end, right? To what end are they building this, empire using human data, right? And they were noting that it's really like an unprecedented scale of data collected by these companies that they use so that they can predict and influence our purchases, our behaviors, and even our thoughts, right? And when we think about that, right, how often have you been looking up something online and then you go on Amazon and all of a sudden it pops up, or you're on your thread on one of these platforms and all of a sudden, as if it came out of the blue, right? There's something else there. And so just start to notice those things, right? Like I'm not looking at this from a space of fear, but of knowledge of, okay, I'm aware of what's going on. And that means that I can make the best decision for myself, right? For myself, for my family, for my business. And I love, there was this great guy, Jason Lanier. He came on and he wrote a book about all of this. It's just fabulous. And one of the quotes in his book, it says, if you're privileged enough to be able to get away with not being on social media, you have a positive responsibility. And I love that, a positive responsibility to get out of it, because you being there is only perpetuating a system that's abusing other people. By me being there, I'm perpetuating a system that's abusing other people, right? When you break it down to the nitty gritty, just to start to think about the reality of that, it really starts to hit home, right? And yes, like for me, that was my step, right? And I think everybody has their own step. Maybe they're just more mindful with it. Maybe they don't let their children become involved into it until a later age, whatever that is, right? It's, definitely making the step, standing for what we believe in, because that systemic change is really what we need, because it's how the technology has been designed and regulated. That is what, they're really trying to hold them accountable for, right? And when we come back, I want to talk to you about the part that hit home with me the most. Being a mom of two young daughters, being a female myself, remembering what my teenage years and adolescent years looked like without social media, remembering all the feelings, the emotions, some of the things that I want to share with you when we come back really blew my mind. I was unaware of the profound effect that this is having on our young people. Um, Specifically, some of the statistics I'm going to share are based around young girls. That does not at all exclude young boys, but this is what the film really brought forward, and I want to share that here with you. So again, really just allowing your mind to stay open, allowing the consideration of what it is that we have allowed in to become our truth, and really asking ourselves, is that is that my truth? any longer, right? Is this something that still resonates with my values and beliefs? And just looking at that, like allowing that to expand into every area of our lives. We're talking about one component, but let that be a systemic view that you start to take for yourself. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment, grounding into your radiance. I'll see you in just a bit. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm Stacie Barber. I'm your host, and I am really excited to have you here as we continue the conversation about a really powerful documentary that changed the way in which I really live and look at my life and run my business. We're talking about The Social Dilemma. It has really opened my eyes to so many different ways of thinking about everything. And before we went into our last break, I kind of brought up to you, part of the movie that really resonated most with me. Any moms out there, right? Anyone that has adolescents or preteens or teenagers, these statistics that they shared in the film really took me aback and resonated so deeply that was sort of the pivotal moment for me that I knew that I had to make a different choice for myself. So what I want to share with you is some information that a social psychologist, his name was Jonathan Haidt, and in the documentary, he really shared that there has been a gigantic, and this is the specific word that he used, gigantic increase in depression and anxiety for American teenagers as a whole, right? This is girls and boys. Which they are targeting and pinpointing that began around 2011, 2013, right? And so if you can think back, that's really when the bump or the draw of social media started coming in for most of us, right? He also began to say, let us that the number of teenage girls out of 100,000 in this country who were admitted to a hospital every year because they either cut themselves or otherwise harmed themselves has begun going way up. All right. And so here are the statistics. Girls ages 15 to 19, if they were in that age group, the admittance to a hospital for either harming themselves or cutting themselves went up 62%. Okay. So we're talking about, high school age group. Now let's drop down and let's talk about girls ages 10 to 14. Okay. I have an 8-year-old. So this started really saying, okay, sister, wake up and listen, right? That percentage in the last year, like last 10 years, has gone up 189% of young girls that have either cut or otherwise harmed themselves. That has nearly tripled, right? Even more horrifying, the same pattern has happened with suicide rates. Okay. So we're talking again about like that 2010, 2011 onward, right? The high school age group, the girls 15 to 19, the rate of suicide has risen 70%. The girls that are ages 10 to 14, the rate of suicide has risen 151%. That's mind blowing. When those numbers started coming up on the screen, I had tears welling up in my eyes because any girl, woman, female out there, raise your hand if you remember how difficult those years felt anyway. Like before all the changes, right, started happening, those middle school years, going into high school, really trying to create your identity and find out who you are. Like there's so much going on anyway. The fact that now we have added this extremely heavy blanket of external pressure and information dripping in, the numbers speak for themselves, right? And again, they have directly linked these patterns to social media and getting on social media in middle school. And the way that it is starting to manifest and display is they are noticing that our children are growing up much more fragile. much more depressed and much less likely to take risks. They're not going out on dates anymore. They are not giving their driver's license until they're much older, right? So much fear has started to encompass their being from these external noises that are outside, right? That are sinking in, that it all seems like too much. And to hear that, right? To hear the numbers that are happening in front of us, and to see the direct link, again, that for me was the wake up call, for me personally, that who do I want to be for my little girls? What example do I want to show them? How can I help guide them in a way that feels the most authentic to me and for them, right? And in the documentary, they follow this family. There's different age groups, and they specifically sort of zone in on this 11-year-old little girl. And she had just gotten her first phone. She was starting to get active on social media, and you could watch as she was getting more and more involved how she physically started going inward, right? Like she wasn't communicating with her family, her siblings. There is a scene where the mom actually puts everyone's phone in a plastic container that locks so that they can all eat dinner without their devices. And that's a rule that we've had in our house for quite some time. Like the devices just don't come to the dinner table. That is time for us to be together as a family. And one of the phones beeps, dings, right? The notification to keep us distracted and keep us wanting to come back for more. It happens. And she physically can't take it. And she actually stands up and takes a hammer and breaks the container to get to her phone. And that did not surprise me, right? The fact that it is such a pull for us, and to think as grown adults that we can hear the ding and immediately we're in conversation and we look to our phone, right? Like it's pulling us away from presence. When you think about the like the little brains that we're talking about that aren't even fully developed, they don't have the comprehension to be able to understand what's happening, how that's drawing them in. The movie goes on to show her putting a post out on a social media platform, and the first few are really encouraging, you look so cute and all of these things, and then out of the blue a message comes in, and it literally says, could your ears be any bigger? And you watch this little girl's face, all the light, all the joy, all the happiness literally gets washed away. She starts to pull her hair over her ears. And then you watch as the following visions of her are in the bathroom, and she's crying and she's going within. And you can't help but feel that, right? You can't help but feel in your heart what that feels like for her. And to know that that can be prevented, to know that for me personally, I can make a different and better choice for myself and my family, that was a no brainer for me. And so, all of this being said, I just want to bring this information to you to share the knowledge that I have gained, to be able to again open your awareness to the possibilities, begin to get really honest with yourself about what it is that I've accepted as my own truth. And is that actually mine? Or can I choose a different truth for myself? All really beautiful and important things right now. Go watch the documentary. It's worth it. Sit down with your family, take some time to just let all that's coming in to come in. Reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. Continue this conversation. Just to let you guys know, I've got a really beautiful private coaching program that I am launching next week. So February 1st. It's a 4-month container where we go in and we really start to reconnect you to who you are, right? To that inner compass, that inner truth. Again, turning down the external noise, coming back home to yourself. We create a path that is completely unique and personal for you. And I believe it is my life's work to bring this to you. So please reach out to me if that resonates. Again, I'm at stacie.barber@gmail.com or staciebarber.com. Find me there. I will look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you all next time. Have a beautiful day.